This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
There he is, locked and loaded and ready to go. How you feeling, Mr. V?
I'm okay. I drove 13 hours yesterday, and now I'm relaxing at my parents' house for the holidays. So I'm good. I'm glad to be here and not in the car anymore. How are you doing?
Can you relax at parents' house? Ooh, that's I don't know. Is that an oxymoron? Is that, or you happen to have the coolest parents in town? They're not going to drive you a little crazy? What's going on? Wait, you didn't say in-laws. You said parents, so there's hope. Okay, wait a minute. There's hope. There's hope.
My parents. No, my parents are pretty cool. I'll hang out and relax. You got the my two daughters are here, so they'll do to play with them and have some time with them. And right after I'm done with this, I'm going to a brewery with my wife, and then I'm taking my mother out for a cocktail later. So this is the time of year, Big O, that I enjoy thoroughly.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So you're not being driven a little crazy. You don't have to cook, huh?
I do. We have a big holiday party on Saturday in which, how can I explain it? So my buddy and I, he's almost like basically my brother. After college, our favorite holiday is Christmas. And we always would lament the fact that, it's like, man, on Christmas, you have to get together with family, half of which you can't stand. Nobody wants to do that. So we jokingly started on the 23rd. We're like, let's have Christmas Eve. And it was like, we're just going to invite people we want to see. And we did it once. And then everybody who went to it was like, you have to keep doing it. And so we've done it now for like 15 years running. And either he comes out to Illinois or I come back to New York and we have it. So on Saturday, we will cook that. I got a 10-pound ham that I got to glaze and roast and all that. We'll get after it. We'll get it done.
Nice. That is strong right there. I like it. You got to send me some pictures of that that ham once it's done, bro. I might fly over there to go get it because that might make me a little too hungry. But either way, we are hungry for victories down here. Your thoughts on Dolphins and Cowboys on Sunday?
First of all, I think it's the best game of the weekend, or at least the best game of Sunday. I mean, the Ravens and Niners is a hell of a game. I got to be honest with you. I am really kind of conflicted on this game because on one hand, the Dolphins just played very well against the Jets. And it's the Jets. I get it. But the Dolphins are missing half their team. They won 30-0. And the Cowboys were a disaster. And if the Dolphins can run the ball like that, it's over. They'll win the game. My question, and you and I have talked about this, will McDaniel stick with it or will they get away from it? Because that has been the problem with McDaniel at times where they run the ball well and then they don't do it. And then we're sitting there the next day and we're like, why did they run the ball 15 times when they were averaging 6 yards a carry? Like, just keep doing it. It's always when you get a good team that gets beat the way Dallas got beat, you feel like they're going to come out and play better. They're just – I mean, there's going to be that, hey, we got to get right. We got embarrassed and all that. On the other hand, this is a big opportunity for the Dolphins as well, who are sitting there going, hey, look, we got to beat a team that most people think is a top team. And also, with the way the Bills schedule breaks, like the Dolphins have to play well down the stretch here. I mean, or you're playing for the division week 18. So this is a critical game. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. And my biggest denominator of this thing is how well do the Dolphins run the ball and how well do they stick to it? I think if they stick to it, they'll win. If they don't, I think Dallas will win.
Yeah, and this past week, like situationally, he did the things that he has kind of lacked at times throughout the year. But the problem was it's the Jets, and you kind of knew, dude, I don't need to put much effort here. Just
no fear of
cruise control. The defense is going to control a team that has no offense whatsoever. I mean, really. And so I can't say that his good decisions from this past week, that he learned his lesson and it will roll over until I actually see it in these kind of games. So, that's the part that I would love to say, yeah, he kind of learned his lesson, but I don't know that yet, man. I don't know that yet.
I think part of it too just depends like how the game goes, right? I mean, if Miami gets off to a good start defensively and they get up on Dallas, then it becomes a hell of a lot easier for McDaniel to say, okay, we're going to run the ball, we're going to stick with it, so on and so forth. Whereas if this is one of these games where Dallas comes out, and look, Dallas has been about as Jekyll and Hyde as you can get. I mean, Dallas has some games where they come out and they look like the best team in football. They have other games that come out, like that Bills game, where they look like they're in mud and they can't do anything, and they're just a train wreck for 3 quarters. I mean, I think if you are the Cowboys, you almost are forced to come out this game and say, look, what we've got to try to test every bit of Miami in terms of, can Lamb work open? Lamb struggled against Teron Johnson last weekend in the slot. I mean, he just could not do anything. If they move him in the slot this week, how does Miami guard him? What do they do? Do they go more of a zone approach? Do they stick man-to-man at the slot? That's interesting. I think if you're Dallas, you want to find that out early. And then also, look, you try to run the ball some in this game with Pollard. Now, Miami's front is a talented front. And with Fangio, I would think Fangio is going to try to shut that off first and foremost and say, hey, look, we're going to make Dak try to beat us, especially with, Matt Martin last week getting hurt, everything else. Like, if I'm Miami, I want to shut the run game off and say, okay, Dak, beat us. Like, we can put Ramsey on an island, beat us. I would think that's how Fangio tries to play. I'm curious to see, though, how that game starts off, because it might, every time, I'm not telling anybody any new news about football. Like, the first couple of drives are critical, but in this game, I think especially, because it's going to drive the way the rest of the game is played.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I think they're going to be able to run, and I think that's going to open everything up for this team. I running has been a strength of this team, and I think if you're going to win from here on out, dude, the weather's only going to get worse. Obviously, if you have the luxury of being the number 1 seed, the weather won't be so bad at home from here on out, and that would be to your advantage. But just in case, if you do have to go on the road, you're not going to play in some good weather. So running is going to be your best friend, and that's what Dallas is susceptible to this. So you should be able to take advantage of it. That's the way I look at it. And you're getting Brooks back to this week too.
Right. And look, I don't disagree. I mean, if you look at Dallas defensively this year, okay, I mean, this is a team that against the run has been pretty average. I mean, even below average. Like, so they're giving up 4.3 yards per carry, which ties them for 18th. So, like, they're middle of the road. They're not terrible. They're not great. Yards per game on the ground, they're 19th. So it's a slightly below average run defense. But to me, the biggest thing, and I thought this was frankly Buffalo's greatest stroke of genius in the game. And to be fair to Joe Brady, he basically admitted after the game, like, hey, we weren't planning to do this, just worked out. They ran the ball so effectively early, it took Parsons and Lawrence out of the game. Like, it just completely negated them. That is the one thing I always laugh when you get these people who are like, well, running the ball, it doesn't matter. And look, you can slow down a pass rush by running the football. It changes the way you play up front as an edge rusher, because now if you're in 2nd and 5, you can't just pin your ears back and go after the quarterback. Now it's okay. I got to contain my edge. I got to watch for any kind of a run fake. You have to be attentive to it. And if I'm Miami, especially with how beat up the line has been, I'm thinking, look, we've got to run the football. I mean, we have got to get, like, the one thing in Miami for me that is death for the Dolphins in this game is if they have a lot of 3rd and longs. That is death against this football team, because Parsons and Lawrence will tee off. Quinn is a creative defensive coordinator. Like, I saw a lot of Cowboys fans complaining about Quinn last week. I'm like, look, if you're getting run over at the point of attack, there's nothing your coordinator's doing, period. Like, you can't dial up anything at that point. You're screwed. You're in 2nd and 2 all game long. I mean, there's no defense for 2nd and 2 other than just to load up the box and hope you can create a negative play. Miami has to be able on 1st down to run successfully in this game. If you get in the 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, that's when Parsons becomes a nightmare and Lawrence is a nightmare. And that's when you run the real – that was, frankly, a lot of what happened in that Kansas City game. They kept getting into 3rd and long, and the Chiefs just kept relentlessly blitzing. I think that would be similar here. So they've got to run the ball on 1st down effectively.
And I hate to say it, bro, but this is a bowl unlike others. See, in most bowls, when you win, you take the trophy, you take the money home, you take the title, all of that. But in this game, this one's called the Fraud Bowl. And the loser is the one that takes the title here, unfortunately. And that's the negative to this whole thing here. I know the Cowboys have kind of been dealing with this for a long time, getting hyped and coming down. But now it's the Dolphins, and they're kind of getting the same kind of negative love. Like, oh, you got to beat, you got to prove. But that's the sad part. The loser of this game, oh man, they're not going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, and let's just even look at the 3 weeks left now. Let's look at the practical part of this. Okay, so if they lose this game, I know the Bills have lost to a lot of bad teams. For sure, I get it, and God knows they're capable.
They're not losing tonight. They're not losing tonight.
They're not losing to the Chargers. Okay, and they're not losing to the Pats at home. They're just not. The Pats at this point are incapable of scoring, and so you're going to be sitting there. The Bills are going to be 10-6 going to Miami. It's happening. Yes. If you're Miami, if you don't win both of these upcoming games, that game's for the division. Now, I'm not saying the Dolphins can't beat the Bills. The Dolphins very well could beat the Bills. Yeah. But you don't want to be in that position. And I'll tell you another thing. I don't know how many Dolphins fans have sat there and thought about this. Maybe a lot have. Maybe they haven't. I don't know. I am a nerd with playoff scenario stuff. I sit there on the ESPN playoff machine for like an hour. And I screw around. I try to figure out who's making the playoffs based off some scenarios. Buffalo, because of their conference record and a couple head-to-head losses like Denver and Cincinnati, they lose every tiebreaker in the AFC with all these wildcard teams. Buffalo is not making the playoffs as a wildcard team unless the Dolphins can win the division at 12-5 and the Bills run the table at 11-6. If the Bills go 10-7, they're not getting in the playoffs. So you're going to have a scenario very likely week 18 where it is for Buffalo, win and you win the division, lose and you miss the playoffs. I mean, that is going to be a wild scenario. And for the Dolphins, it could either be, hey, win the game, win the division, lose, be a wild card, or potentially how they play the next couple of weeks, win and you're the 1 seed, lose and you're the 3 seed. I mean, so there is, they always wait for the week 18 slate. They wait the Sunday night flex the week before, like they flex it during the week 17 Sunday night game. They can flex that game right now because that's going to be the Sunday night football game. And that game is going to be for everything, in my opinion, for Buffalo. If you're the Dolphins, though, you can take a lot of air out of that game by winning these next 2. Maybe you're still playing for the 1 seed, but you don't have to worry about the division. That is something where if I'm Miami, that is motivating me like none other the next couple of weeks.
All right, dude. So you tell me, this past week, he and the team lose to Seattle 20-17. He has 143 passing yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Yep.
Then they got walloped by Dallas 33-13, and he had 197 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. In San Francisco, they got walloped also 42-19. He did throw 298 yards, but only 1 touchdown in that game. But more importantly, after that game, Nick Bosa said, we put it on tape, we've exposed him, and then he's gone on to lose and play worse along the way. Every week he has played worse than the game he played against Nick Bosa. So you tell me, has the league figured out Jalen Hurts, or is this just a funk?
Yeah, I think it's a funk. Look, some of this is somewhat explainable, right? I mean, the Niners right now are the best team in football, and they went to Philly and they just killed them. Yeah. The Dallas game, that's of the 3, I think, is the one where you're like, man, that was just an egg. I mean, that game, like, they didn't even show up. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. The only touchdown they had in that game was Jalen Carter's scoop and score. The Seattle game, well, I don't give the team a pass. I think it was pretty obvious Hurts was feeling like death in that game. I mean, they had to fly on a separate plane, the whole deal. Now, listen, you play and you live with the result. I mean, if you play, you're saying you can play. I think a lot of times we make too much of this blueprint stuff. Like, oh, they figured this out. Okay, but they don't have the Niners, talent, right? I mean, most teams aren't going in there with 7.
No one has the Niners, bro.
I mean, it's like this idea that, like, oh, now the Niners did it. We're going to do it. No, you're not. Like, it's you don't have the Niners, capabilities. I will say this, though, for the Eagles, not so much Hurts specific, but Eagles specific. I think you are to a point where they can't defend anybody. I mean, they just cannot get off the field.
Doesn't it seem the same as the last Super Bowl when they won it? This time they didn't win it, but when they won it, then they started to fall apart after that. And now that they reached like that pinnacle, and now it seems like they're starting to fall apart from that. And it's like the weirdest thing.
Well,
like, it's odd.
It's so hard. Because when, the Eagles last year obviously were loaded on both sides of the ball, but it's so hard to keep a great defense together because a great defense requires how many guys to be great? I mean, 7, 8 guys. It's hard. When you are, I'm trying to give an example. When you're the Peyton Manning Colts, okay, Now, I know he had Wayne, okay, and he had Harris. I get it. But like, you're going to be great on offense for 15 years, Jeff Peyton Manning. I mean, if you have anybody around that guy, okay, you're going to be great. The Chiefs have receivers right now who I'm pretty sure are actively betting against the Chiefs, and they're still going to win 12 games this year because of Mahomes. It's easier to be great on offense if you have the quarterback. Then, we saw this offseason with the Eagles. They lost Hargrave, and they lost both their starting safeties. And
Shit, they added Jalen Carter, bro.
I know.
Shit.
Right? They added Carter.
God, he's already one of the 5 best linemen in the NFL, dude. Huh?
They added him. They added Nolan Smith, but they lose Hargrave, and Reddick's not going to have 20 sacks this year, as good as he is, and they lose T.J. Edwards in the middle, and they lose. I mean, they lost basically the whole middle of their defense, and so now it's like, hey, great, you still have Slay and Bradbury, but it's an expressway down the middle of the field. I mean, you can just throw the ball all over them, and guess what? Your pass rush doesn't matter when guys are getting open in a second. I mean, it just doesn't matter anymore. That's the problem. Where like Philly. Look, I still wouldn't want to play them in a playoff game. They're a talented team. They're a smart team. They're a proud team. But at this point, you do look at the NFC, I think, and go, yeah, it's the Niners. I mean, unless they just get, they have a day where – I'll tell you what. I don't know how you feel about this. I think maybe in some ways the scariest team for the Niners is the Rams. Because the Rams see them all the time.
Dude, wow, great job by them, dude. They have quietly turned that thing around, man.
They have the 2 receivers, and if there's one thing with the Niners, you can throw the ball on them. Like, you can throw the ball in San Francisco if you can block them. The Rams have had a good line this year. They have 2 great receivers. Stafford can throw the ball through a Cheerio. Yeah. And, like, one thing about the Rams, look, Donald is so great. He can just wreck shop. I mean, he can just have a game where it's like, hey, that guy had 3.5 sacks and 7 pressures. And, I mean – and you know as well as I do, sometimes in football, the scariest thing is a team that's familiar with you. They know you. They're not afraid of you. Like McVay and Shanahan, they're best friends. They know each other. They coach together. So if I'm the Niners, bring in the Cowboys all day. I'll play the Cowboys any day of the week. The Rams, in an odd way, if I'm the Niners or the team, I don't want to play because they know you. They have no fear of you. I think, I'm curious to see how it shakes with them.
And They actually the Rams should be the team that can play the loosest out of everybody because nobody is giving you the time of day.
And they just won a Super Bowl. There's no pressure on them. They can go in there and go, what the hell? I mean, what do we care?
Yeah.
I actually think in an odd way, like if they play the Niners in the divisional round, that's just going to be dismissed nationally. Oh, that's a joke. I could see that being a game where it's 2020 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I didn't see this coming, dude. I wasn't a believer of him when he was coming out of school. I didn't think he could play at a high level. I loved his swag and all that kind of stuff, but I got to give him mad props, bro, because watching somebody go hit top to then hit bottom and then climb back up, Baker Mayfield deserves a lot of love and a lot of respect, dude, because it's hard to bounce back after you've been beaten down the way he has, or you fail, or those kind of things, or, all the crap that went on with him in Cleveland. He has played some really good football that I did not see coming, my man. I got to say.
I totally agree with you. I mean, Mayfield, his career looked over last year.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, it really did. Like, okay, he goes out, he gets booted from Cleveland. He goes to Carolina. Carolina cut him. Carolina was like, yeah, we're good. Get out. He goes to the Rams, and okay, I mean, he had that one crazy Thursday night game against the Raiders, but like, he wasn't anything special. They're like, all right, they're irrelevant. Who cares? And when he went to the Bucs, I thought he'd win the job over Trask, but I remember thinking, like, this team, they're a bottom 5 team in the league with this guy at quarterback. I mean, it's not going to be able to produce. They're probably going to win the division. I mean, maybe New Orleans does it, but like Tampa already beat him in New Orleans. I'm with you. I give Mayfield a ton of credit. Do I think they're a scary team in the playoffs? No. But, like, do I respect him enough and that offense enough that with Evans and Godwin, could they just have a game where
He's a professional quarterback, bro?
Yes.
He's a professional quarterback.
If I'm Tampa, I'd bring him back next year. Maybe I'm drafting somebody. That's cool. But, like, I'm bringing him back. I'm definitely bringing him back. And it's to his credit. We've been watching Mitchell Trubisky the last couple of weeks.
Oh, my God.
And you're like, oh my God. I mean, he he can't play. Like, he's not even an NFL backup.
The guy the Jets had, the former Lion,
Simeon, yeah,
Boyle or whatever.
Boyle. Oh my God, Boyle, yeah.
Jesus Christ, dude! You don't belong
play
anywhere in the NFL, bro.
You go to the combine. I go to the combine. Hell, we met up last year. I remember when Trubisky was coming out of Buffalo as a free agent. When he spent the 1 year with the Bills as free agent, people were talking about Trubisky like, "Oh, he's rehabbed." His agent, that's the greatest sell job in NFL history.
Big time.
I mean, that man should have gotten 30%. It's unbelievable. Like, people were talking about Trubisky, and I remember looking up that he had like 8 pass attempts that year for Buffalo, and he threw a pick. And people are like, he's great. He's rehab. He can't play. And here's Mayfield, who is every bit as dead in his career as Trubisky was.
Yeah.
And now you look at him and go, hey, man, that guy's a league average starter. Like, he's not great, but I do quarterback rankings for SI every week. I think this week he was 16th, like smack dab in the middle. I mean, you can win games. You can win games with Baker Mayfield. So I'm with you. Kudos to him.
One more thing before I let you go. Randy likes to run his mouth. And now the latest one that he's like, making his self-declaration that he's the greatest receiver ever and better than Jerry Rice. And, I got to watch this guy's entire career, dude. And, a 10-time All-Pro to a 4-time All-Pro, a guy that won so many titles. Jerry Rice, put it this way. I tweeted this out. Here's the difference between Rice and Moss, and this is all you need to know. At least in my eyes. I'm interested to know what you think, but in my eyes, when Jerry was at his peak, okay, we were arguing if Jerry Rice was the greatest football player ever.
Yeah.
We weren't talking receiver. We were talking better than Jim Brown, better than whatever you wanted to come up with. You were putting Jerry Rice in that conversation. And it reminds me a lot of Tua and Tyreek, not putting them in the same class, people, relax. But the talking points. People used to say Rice was more important than Montana. I lived it. I watched it. I read it. I know it. They used to say it. Why? Because they went to the extreme of giving Jerry Rice the label of the greatest football player ever. So for me, he made Rich Gannon an MVP at 40 years old. Okay. No, seriously. I mean, the shit Jerry Rice did, it just does not, it's just, to me, it's like it's two completely different players. And Randy Moss took plays off. This guy never took a play off. Even if the ball wasn't coming to him, he was
Randy Moss took multiple seasons off.
Yes, multiple seasons off. Exactly. And to me, when we talk about Rice, I want young people to understand the discussion used to be with Rice, greatest player ever. We don't even bother talking about wide receiver because that would be ignorant. Yeah. Your thoughts?
For my money, Jerry Rice is the greatest player ever. I mean, I got to tell you, look, we always go to quarterbacks and default to quarterbacks. I know Brady won 7. I get it. And I'm not taking anything away from Tom Brady.
Of course not.
But to me, like Tom Brady, I'm trying to think how I can word this without getting myself in trouble. Tom Brady is like Bill Russell. Okay, Bill Russell is not often talked about as like the greatest basketball player of all time, but he's the greatest winner of all time.
I like that.
Brady was the greatest winner I've ever seen. There are guys who have played the quarterback position who are more talented than Brady. But Brady, in terms of the way, to totality that is Brady, right, of course, right. I mean, so there's that example. Rice is the greatest receiver ever by a comical margin. It's kind of like if you watch hockey, like Wayne Gretzky is the best hockey player ever by a ridiculous margin. Like for context of that, if you took away every goal Wayne Gretzky ever scored in his career, which is more than anybody's ever scored, by the way, he would still lead the NHL all time in points just by his assists. Like, that's how ridiculous he's been. And so with Rice, I think he and Lawrence Taylor are the 2 greatest players in NFL history, period. I mean, just in terms of pure dominance, Rice is over 21,000 receiving yards.
By the way, just to add a little bit to your point, I was listening to Dan Patrick, and that one of his guys brings in like historical stats every day. And it was like a week ago or like 6 days ago, 5 days ago. It was just recently. But he goes, on this day in 19 whatever, he goes, Wayne Gretzky just passed 100 points in the season.
It's
December. December.
I can't remember. I think it was the year he had 215 points. And he, at one point, like late in the year, it was like their 75th or 76th game, he had only not had a point in 2 games.
Yeah.
For the year. I mean, it's just, but like in 1994 with Rice had like almost 1,900 yards receiving. In 1994.
Yeah.
And that's literally adjusted for now. Like if you had like 2,700 yards, like what Tyreek Hill's doing this year is unbelievable. Like unbelievable stuff. If he didn't get hurt, he probably hits 2,000. He might still hit 2,000.
And that's the difference. Also, he never got hurt.
Right.
He never got hurt.
I mean, the guy almost hit 2,000 yards 30 years ago. It's just, look, anybody who argues, I always laugh when they do these videos with these current guys. I'm like, hey, so-and-so, who are your top 5 receivers of all time? You always know it's a good list when number 2 is like Chad Johnson.
Right.
You know, like, bro, come on, man. It's not Jerry Rice. To me, Rice was more dominant in his position than anybody else has ever been at their position by a mile. Now, like Lawrence Taylor, I toss in there because he changed the way offense was played.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Taylor, I mean, Joe Gibbs had to change his offense because they just couldn't block him. They could not figure out a way to block Lawrence Taylor. As great as all these quarterbacks are, and you could talk Montana, you could talk about Brady, and whoever you want to toss in there. How many guys have literally forced the rules change because you're like, you can't stop it. Like, there's nothing you can do. Where Taylor literally changed the NFL rule book. Right. There's like, well, there's nothing you can do. Stop him. And that's greatness. Yeah,
I'm with you there. All right, follow him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. What do you got going on Sports Illustrated, my friend?
I wrote it all in advance this week so I could enjoy the holiday. So I got the matchups to watch. Goes out on Friday. I obviously broke down Dolphins Cowboys and broke down every other game. I got the quarterback rankings up. They come out today. Film study out earlier this week, and then I'll have on Sunday, Christmas Eve, and happy holidays, by the way, to you and everybody else out there watching. But Christmas Eve, I'll be working. I will have my immediate reaction to all these games as they're wrapping up. You can check it out right on the front page of SI.com. I'll tweet it out, the whole deal. Listen, you know, it should be a very interesting slate of games, especially in Miami. We're probably the best game going on Sunday afternoon. I look forward to watching.
Amen. Amen. Happy holidays, my friend. Enjoy the friends. Enjoy the family. We will catch up next week, my friend. Thank you.
Sounds good. Take care.
You got it. The great Matt Verderame. Good stuff as always.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.